In 1858, there were many notable events such as the first reading tour by Charles Dickens, Minnesota became the 32nd state of America, and the announcement of the theory of natural evolution in London. However, in the same year, the air over central London smelt of human waste fermenting on the banks of the River Thames. This disgusting smell was so pervasive that it seeped into citizens' homes, hospitals, and even the Houses of Parliament. London had spawned from a Roman fort in AD 110 and was relatively modest in size. As it expanded over the centuries, so did the problem of waste disposal. The Thames River supplied water but was also used as a dumping ground and was the most contaminated waterway in the world by the mid-19th century. In this particular summer of 1858, a terrible heat wave descended on the city, and the cloying stench and oppressive heat were breeding grounds for disease and illness. In Parliament, the MPs wanted to ignore the problem, which would require vast sums of money being spent on infrastructure programs to resolve. Instead, they sat in the House of Commons and tried to continue without addressing the elephant in the room. To bypass the problem, the curtains of the Houses of Parliament were dipped in a mixture of lime and chloride, but the great stink slipped past these defenses and assailed the nostrils of the lawmakers. Where the existing sewers discharged into the river, men shoveled tons of lime every day onto the shoreline to douse the vile smell, to no avail. It took this pervasive odor to finally kick the MPs into action. They realized they couldn't just abandon London and sit elsewhere. Where would the people of London go? So, instead they acted to implement a sewage system for the city and take care of the River Thames. A sewage system was planned for the city, and it would extend more than 1,100 miles, or 1,800 kilometers. Several decades later, London was still struggling with its polluted waters when a pleasure steamer cruising up the Thames collided with a cargo ship and sank. The SS Princess Anne was on a moonlight trip when it collided with the sailing ship around 7:20 p.m. She was struck next to her paddle box on the starboard side and started taking on water. The ship sank in just over 4 minutes, with many of the passengers simply drowning as they could not swim. Others died from swallowing the poisonous water despite being rescued. The sinking had occurred right next to where the sewage from London was released into the river twice daily. The pleasure cruiser was allowed to carry 1,000 passengers, and nearly 700 of those who entered the water that night died. Over the next 100 years, the situation did improve, and fish finally returned to the River Thames in the 1960s, and the big stink was just a distant, forgotten memory.